All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Winston Yo. I'm the AIA president for this year. And I'm joined tonight from our RIBA representative, Vivian Wong, as well as from our latest CA, Graphisoft, their BIM expert, Eugenio Fontan. We're gathered, so this is a 1+4 series. So tonight we'll go over a series of primer and overview of the best practices on Open BIM, specifically via Graphisoft's own platform, Archicad. And then it will be followed with 4 follow-up deep dive sessions where we'll have a chance to actually get our hands dirty, download some files, and explore those issues in greater detail. Now, you will see in the chat box that we'll add a survey link in which you can vote on the topics that are of most interest to you, and we'll arrange the follow-up workshops accordingly. Now, I'd like to introduce Eugenio. He is a BIM expert, and oh, sorry, my Siri is chiming in. Eugenio is a BIM expert as well as a trained architect, and he has given many talks both locally and regionally in Singapore with the SGA and locally with the CIC, as well as helping the government implement those BIM best practices. Without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Eugenio.
Okay, thank you very much, Winston. Thank you everyone, both from AIA and the RIBA chapters in Hong Kong for allowing us to be tonight presenting to you. And yeah, so as Winston was mentioning, our presentation tonight is about intuitive BIM for architects. So let me just introduce myself briefly, but yeah, Winston already mentioned that I'm a BIM consultant and an architect by background. I have my master's degree in architecture and urbanism. I'm also a registered architect in the ARB in the UK and member of the HKI BIM in Hong Kong. I also have been working in the region and in Europe and in other countries the last 15 years. And I've been quite in touch with BIM technology for many years already. Even for the co-founder of one company based in Hong Kong, which is Ensign APD, which is architecture, design, and technology implementation. So the presentation about intuitive BIM for architects, I'm going to present focusing on two ideas. Okay, the first one is about architects and BIM technology, and the second is more a question: is what is it an intuitive smart workflow? So first of all, let me introduce briefly my company, Graphisoft. Graphisoft develops three main solutions, which are called Archicad, our collaboration tool, which is called BIM Cloud, and our application for sharing data, which is called BIMX. So as Winston was mentioning, I've been working in the last years closely with the different bodies of the Hong Kong government, including the CIC, Construction Industry Council, and the new chapter of the Open the Building Smart in Hong Kong, which is the HKI BIM, that you can see here on the right side. And also working together with the government bodies to try to understand which are the best BIM standards to implement in the region. I think this has shaped the focus of the presentation that I have, which is that there is still a lot of misconceptions, a lot of I will say not best practices in the use of this technology. So apart from this, this is just an overview of many of the users that we have in Hong Kong in the region. Most of our users are architects, but we also have customers that are contractors, are engineering companies, and even developers. And this is a reference that we have from this publication, which is AAC Bytes, which I believe that reflects our intention of trying to produce some of the best tools for architects and try to really support those customers and work together with them. So we appreciate this feedback from this publication in our practice. So going directly to the first idea of the night, which is architects and BIM technology. When it comes to BIM, I believe that we are all kind of familiarized with this term, more or less, but we all know that it has many applications and many advantages. So we can extract the documentation, we have a 3D model, we can do time schedule, calculate costs, and use BIM for also operation and maintenance. But then there is also a lot of misconception about what is really all this 4D, 5D, 6D about, and you can see in the image below that sometimes 7D can be taken as facility management, 8D streamline design in digital space, 9D enable robots to perform tasks. So a lot of times we understand there's some value, but we don't really understand exactly what can we get from it. So I would also like to highlight the BIM benefits I think we all have heard or have used, which is from doing collision detections to understand clashes in between disciplines before they happen in construction, extract accurate quantities to cost estimation, generate accurate documentation, doing energetic evaluations, and doing construction performance simulations. So knowing all these names that we have heard, in many cases, as I said, I think we use, the main values would be that BIM is supposed to save errors in the development of our projects, save time, save cost, and help us to do a better design and better execution. But we also are aware of the problems that we experience or we heard from other peers about BIM. And most likely, I believe that most of you will recognize the gentleman in the picture. We have also this component in our profession, which is very related to creativity. So often BIM has been also taken as a tool or a workflow that it doesn't align with this creative workflow that we have. And we have heard also or experienced all these set of problems that BIM platforms, the BIM platforms that we use are not intuitive, they're not flexible, and they're just complicated. And actually, instead of saving time, they are very time consuming. And also the tools that as a software itself, they crashes or they cannot handle large projects or complex projects as we wish because they align with our design intention. So also the question related to this topic is how we architects are using BIM, or how can we really take advantage of all these great capabilities of BIM to improve the way we work. Okay, sometimes this is a question, and again, this is my experience when I talk to customers, I talk to users or new users, or even I talk to institutions, that seems that really there is not an understanding of which are the advantages, and sometimes it's even not really solving the problems that it's supposed to be. So very often architecture firms, we still work in traditional 2D CAD and 3D workflow. So we have, we produce this documentation, we produce the work, we produce the deliverables, and then sometimes clients ask for BIM. And then what we do is we say, okay, because we do BIM, we're gonna produce the BIM deliverables, or we can hire an external company, an external consultant that is gonna produce the BIM deliverables. And then we often happen that we end up producing a double work. So we first produce everything as we used to do, and then we produce the BIM deliverables. So we end up having in companies, and this I've seen also in large organizations, that there are two teams, like two families existing on the same company. There's one team that produce documentation, whether it's for design or for the statutory submission, and then produce also 3D models for different studies, for renderings, for animations. And the second team is the one that is internal or external, trying to do in parallel this BIM workflow, these BIM models that can produce all these possibilities that we were discussing. So what it means is that we use BIM only when it's required, and the rest of the time we work the way we used to work on the past 30 years. And what this means is that we end up having duplicate teams, resources, and coordination, and we duplicate efforts, which means that we don't work in an efficient way. And for me, what it means, like, we're not able to take advantage of technology. We don't leverage on BIM to make our life easier, and it end up being even the opposite, right? So when I see this from different, as I say, an organization or audiences or teams in which we're getting in touch, I believe that the first thing that we discuss is how can we stop this duplication, right? So it's important to understand. Sometimes, I talk about these topics and people say, okay, but what's the point, right? Why don't we work the way we always did? Okay, it's fine. We are successful. We have projects. Well, I believe we all have a responsibility to improve. And in this image that you see here, it's very easy to get, to encounter this information, which is that compared to other sectors, our sector, construction, is one of the less developed from the digitalization point of view, meaning that on all the asset usage and labor fields that you can see on the columns, we are almost the latest developed. So it seems that we still do things and we still build in the way we used to many years ago, and we haven't increased in the productivity. We haven't become more efficient in any way, and of course, let go more sustainable. So I believe that this is something that as architects we have a great responsibility. So that was the point about what I have observed in different markets about the relationship in between architects and BIM technology. Very often, it's not always like that, but it's very common. And what I would like to go now is to the second idea, which is the idea of the intuitive and the smart workflow. So from my perspective, and I believe that also from a lot of the audience perspective, we should be using an intuitive workflow that automates documentation and data. So we can avoid duplication, and we can truly save time and errors. And we can focus on doing better architecture. We focus on spend our time adding value and try to automate and use technology to save time in manual labor. So we can do better and more sustainable design and better execution. So for me, this is the message that I think we need to incorporate and we need to communicate, right? And we need to try to improve following this idea. So the idea that we propose is that instead of having two workflows, okay, we don't have this idea of working in 2D and 3D. We just have BIM as the only workflow in which we automate everything that we need to develop our projects. And I know that for some people it sounds like, okay, we already use this, but a lot of peers, a lot of colleagues, they hear this and they say, look, how can we do this, right? How can really we just work in BIM from the beginning? Well, I believe that this is the objective. This is the idea I truly believe. So I'm going to present a few short videos about some topics, okay, about what I believe that can be an intuitive and a smart workflow and how BIM can help us to achieve it. Some of these topics we will discuss later, as Winston was saying. We will develop some hands-on workshops later on throughout the year that will have to do with these topics. So first of all, I believe that the smart workflow we propose comes by the hand of Archicad, which is the BIM authoring tool that we develop. So the first step, I believe, starting from zero, is that if we want to have a smart workflow, we should start with an intuitive design and modeling at the concept stage. So in this video, what I'm showing is, a very, very tiny, simple model from which we can start to do from zero. Okay, so the reason why I show this exercise is because, again, most of my colleagues and even friends, they say, look, there's no such a thing as starting from zero working in BIM. We cannot do that because it's not intuitive and it's not easy. Well, I believe that at least the solutions we promote, with a few clicks, we can create a few elements. So we can model as easily and as comfortably as in other 3D tools, with the main advantage that as we model, we also have information, as you can see, where it's like if we're drawing in floor plan, okay? But what we start to have is a model that has a lot of information that is going to help us later on to develop our project. So in this case, we're doing some walls. We're doing now a curtain wall. So instead of having to model all the different parts and all the pieces, with a few clicks, we have already a system in place. And then, as you can see, the parts that we are modeling are already show some of the 2D information that will become the documentation that we export later on. So now we go into the 3D window. So we can model both in 2D or in 3D when we use Archicad. And we are going to start to do a couple of operations that will get us with the design that we desire. Another thing I wanted to highlight is that some of these how to say BIM complaints or BIM error problems that we were showing at the beginning has to do with how easy is this workflow, but also we've seen how easy it is to create curved geometry, both in walls or in the roof. So I believe that at least our BIM solution doesn't have the limitation of the geometry. Okay, we want to provide a robust solution that can help us very easily to create curved windows or curved walls without having the machine in which we're working having to suffer or having to do too much to use too many resources. So then we can easily adapt the curtain wall scheme, adapt it to the geometry of the project, and as you can see in 3 minutes we have already a small model, and we have already also a few documents. So we have the floor plan that even could automate the generation of a drawing 1 to 50 if we want in terms of scale. And we have some sections and elevations. So as you can see also, the elements of the model that we use already have some intelligent building materials that interact with each other. So they start to create automatically the connections in between them. And then just think about trying to generate, a elevation of a brick wall. Of course, we'll try to do that with 2D tools, but when it comes to the curvature, if we want to do it right, we'll have to work it out manually, and it won't be that easy or that immediate. So in this case, we can represent exactly what we have. We can export this documentation, and we don't have to spend time redrawing. So that will be starting from zero. And now I want to show a video of the combination of Archicad and the possibilities of computational design. So I'm sure that most of you will be already acquainted with this technology. I mean, with this tool, which is called Rhinoceros 3D. I believe it's one of the most powerful 3D modeling tool. As you can see with Grasshopper and visual programming, we can automate a lot of complex geometry. We change some sliders and we change completely the geometry of our design. I think this is really where I will consider automation. And how do we link this with our BIM platform? Well, in the case of Archicad, we have a connection. In this case, what we're seeing here is a first option of a design of a tower that is twisted, it's very curvy, it's very, has, some kind of challenging geometry. And as you can see here, we have the documentation of that tower that usually, if we're not working using BIM, we'll have to export the DWGs and the 2D information, the 2D line, to then rework it manually and spend hours producing it. So what we do is we delete the first option that we have and we click on the connection button. Okay, in Archicad, so now there is established what is called the connection. So all these nodes that we can see here now that have the little toggle that says true or false, when we turn them true, they will start sending elements to Archicad. So the curves and the polylines that we have in Rhino, as you can see, they become parts of our model. In this case, we have the walls of the facade and the spaces. These elements are this is called zones. So the spaces of the project. And now we're going to pass from Rhino to Archicad the slabs, the shading. So anything we have in the model in Rhino becomes part of the model in Archicad. And what this means is like this model is the one that is going to generate the documentation and the information for ourselves. And now we're going to pass, for example, the parts, the core walls of the core structure of the project, also the spaces, the zones. And now in the last step, we're going to pass the structure, the columns. So those turn red when the connection is not running. When it's running, it turns gray. We can click true to synchronize. In a few seconds, the column will arrive. Of course, if the geometry is very challenging, this connection can take a bit more time. But this video that you can see here is, I think, less than 4 minutes, and it's I just accelerated. It goes twice as fast as the real speed. So the funny thing is that means that in 8 minutes, we have someone that has done a project in Rhino and Grasshopper, which probably we all have friends, we all have colleagues that are very good at it, because I think really it's a great tool. In a matter of minutes, we can have that model in Archicad, and we can have this documentation automated. Also, something I want to highlight here is that, again, we all have heard that BIM platforms, some BIM tools are not robust enough to store large models or complex models. So what we want to promote among architects is that our solutions are robust enough to hold these large models. And that's where we think that this makes the life of an architect easier. We don't need to split the model in many pieces, and we don't need to wait long hours for the geometry to display. We can really store large models, and we don't have to count with this heavy limitation of needing to buy a new machine every time. And then we keep automating the drawings from the models. You can see that the plan has changed following the new design. And of course, we can take views. We can explore the 3D without having problems. And when we develop a bit further our design, we can have the curtain wall. We can have more detailed documentation that, of course, later on, once it's in Archicad, we can keep developing using the Archicad tools. And once we have this, of course, it's enough to have one click, and we export all these PDFs in DWG format or whatever is needed for the development of the project. Then, once we start the design, now we continue with the documentation. So in a more advanced stage of the project, of course, we want to extract this documentation, saving as much time as possible. So in this example, we're showing a tower that, again, we have curtain walls, we have a lot of geometry, we still can move around without any problem. We can also work in perspective, which I believe that, at least for me, is quite important, because I really like to export axonometric documents, but I need to design in perspective. For me, it's quite important. And then in this case, we're going to use one tool, which is called trace and reference, which means that whatever view we have in 2D, we can overlay another view in 2D. In this case, for example, the elevation. And with this menu of trace and reference, we can see more or less the trace. We can even hide the active view, which is the floor plan. And this allows us to see at the same time as we work in the floor plan, we see what happens in the elevation, in the section, or another floor plan. In this case, we're changing the dimensions of the curtain wall. You can see how it changes in plan. And now, in a few seconds, it updates the elevation, and we can see how the elevation has changed as well. We can switch in between views. So we can now go into the elevation and have the floor plan as a trace reference. So we can constantly have feedback of how our design changed when we change the different parts of it. And again, I think that this helps a lot on the design process, and it also saves time on the documentation production. And then, of course, in the 3D, we can have a look. We're not convinced. We just go back and put the same dimensions we had before, or we can keep modifying further. And of course, floor plan and elevation will update. In another further workshop, of course, there is also this template that we developed together with some of our customers for Hong Kong market, which is to automate the submission of the GBP for buildings department, which I think is also an advantage to be able to save time at this stage. In this case, now in this short video, I'm going to show how we go deeper onto the scale of the construction documentation. So doing construction details in 2D, I mean, is something that is necessary, but sometimes, we want to explain things with axonometric or with 3D views because it also explains very well. So as you can see here, we have the different parts of our model that we are selecting that are those producing the documentation. If I change the type of wall, in this case, you can see that the labels are smart. So if I change one part of the model, all the labels in all documents will follow, will be updated. In this case, I change the material of the slab, of the finished floor, sorry, and the description will be updated as well. Another interesting thing is to be able to go back to the 3D view that generate this 3D document, so we can move around and we can study the detail in more closely without having to create additional cameras or additional views. So we can re-navigate in a natural way, in a very easy way, so we can make sure that the design starts to look, keeps looking as we want it. And then, of course, from that same model, those elements generate the details. So I believe that up to scale 1 to 50 or 1 to 20, it's easy to have all the documentation automated from the model. Of course, when we want to add more detail, to get to details 1 to 10, 1 to 5, of course, we can draft on top of the details, but we always do it on top of a detail that comes from the 3D model and that is coordinated. And as you can see, we change one type of profile and it updates in all the different parts of the document. Now, other aspect that I think that an intuitive workflow should allow us, which is related with visualization possibilities. So, sometimes to explain, to communicate our projects, it's quite important to have really impressive animations. And I remember it's very common still that we need to pay very expensive to teams to do this animation outsourced. But in this case, this platform is called Twinmotion, and it's really, really easy to use. And we can create these animations in-house. I have just a brief example that I opened in YouTube because I wanted to show one of my projects, but in this case I couldn't. Okay, so for whatever reason, I cannot show it now. Okay, anyway, for some reason the link is not working, but I wanted just to show, I mean, again, we can do a workshop about how to create these animations and these renderings very easily. For some reason, this is not working. Anyway. Okay. I think I will have to show you this in the next time. I wanted just to show that this animation is not something that, we can do in outsource. It's very easy to navigate. It's very easy to create it ourselves, and it gives us the chance to produce this type of material without having to go after additional external consultants. Another aspect of the workflow we promote, which is about the energy evaluation for sustainable design. So in this case, these parts of the model of Archicad, the spaces, they called zones, they have the information of the temperature and the different comfort requirements that they have. And these spaces also understand the different construction around them, okay, to get that hydrothermal comfort. So if we change the construction of the project, these spaces will understand that that's changed, and then the requirements of the energy that is needed to get to that comfort zone will change. So we can evaluate, depending on our design decisions, how this energy requirements of our project. We can even select, as you can see in the screen, the different glazing systems, windows or doors, and we can analyze all the physical characteristics, and even we can see how the sun impacts on that glazing surface. This is quite important because it will generate the greenhouse effect. And of course, if we change the location, or we change the orientation, or we change even the shading that this element have, this data will be updated. So in this sense, we can use the model again to do this analysis that I have, because they have already all the physical characteristics of the real construction. So now, regarding the compatibility, I think this is also something important to mention. So Archicad is quite compatible with many different platforms. So I try to put here all the options that I know that are available. So Archicad can very easily exchange data with this group of tools, can export and import CAD files, Rhino files, SketchUp, connection with Twinmotion, Enscape, Cinema 4D, of course, all sort of PDF, documentation, DWG. You know, we can extract hundreds of packages of drawings with one click in these formats. But also we have direct connection with many BIM solutions that we have on the right side. So you can see the Rofus, SIA, and other BIM solutions. And using, of course, Open BIM approach using IFC, we can collaborate with all the other BIM solutions that are in the market. So in this sense, using Archicad also allows a great compatibility with other tools, which means other teams as well. This is a diagram from one of our clients in Japan, Nikken Seikei, that they have been using already for many years. You can see because the logos are totally outdated. They have been using Archicad as a backbone of all the combination of the different operations that have to happen to the project, and the different performance of the different tools. And then, of course, some of you will be familiarized with the concept of Open BIM, which is export BIM in open format. In this sense, our solution is really compatible with all the Open BIM standards. And again, with construction industry and with the Hong Kong BIM, I personally have conducted workshops explaining the best practices to avoid data loss in between platforms, in this case, Archicad and Revit. And again, these workflows can be learned. They're easy to implement. And again, we really enjoy working with our customers to make this easier for them. So in this short video, I'm going to show just some of the easy, compatibilities or this interoperability that Archicad has with other platforms. So in a website like this one, like BIM Object, we're downloading any object in different formats. In this case, we're using SketchUp, IFC, and Revit. For Revit case, trying to find something more complex, like some HVAC system. I mean, I'm not an engineer, so I'm not totally sure what's the machine I'm downloading here. But for example, the case of the SketchUp model, you can just drag and drop in the window. So this means that we have access to hundreds or thousands of libraries that are online that we can find. And again, depends on how the object has been done. We have more or less level of detail. Of course, later we can add as much data as we need. And then we can also drag and drop any IFC model and will appear. In this case, we also have the 2D representation, and this is how it looks. You know, the different objects have different 3D visibility. And again, in this case of the IFC, we have way more data that we can even modify. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add the Revit family. So there is this menu, which is import Revit families, and it will be translated as a native library of Archicad. We can choose the different level of polygons. And once it's in, we can go to the object tool, and we can place the new Revit family. So of course, then these elements can be edited further later on to be more smart or to have more possibilities. And in this case, of course, when we just drag and drop, maybe some of the possibilities of the object natively are not there, but very often there are a lot of them. And of course, we can. For me, I think that the relevant point at this step of the process is that we can change the data that we have inside the object. And here you see when we do save as from the 3D window, you can see all the different format files: Collada file, Rhino, Google Earth, SketchUp, and the same from the program. We can just directly save as in almost any format that is needed for our work, for the architectural work. And here I'm just showing that apart from this, Archicad comes with thousands of predefined objects, smart objects that are highly possible to customize. In this case, you can see the possibilities of having different type of doors, and all these objects are here out of the box already when you use Archicad. So apart from the possibilities of doing our work, I think that even nowadays, more than any time, we need to be able to work from anywhere. Okay, work from home or work remotely. So that's why we have this BIM cloud solution, which allows team to work within the same local environment, different people in the same project, but we can also connect remote offices very easily. So we can have collaborating from different countries, teams in the same models. And we can also access this data and these projects through web browser. And then the connection with our other solution, which is BIMX, will be able to connect what we see at any time of the development of the project. In this video, I want to show briefly this collaboration workflow. You can see here on this palette, the one that says teamwork, it says here Andrew. Okay, so this person, Andrew, that is working here, there is two people connected to the project. It's Andrew, one is Marty. So what is going to happen is that Andrew is going to receive, he's going to say now send and receive, he's going to receive the changes from Marty, and he's going to compare the changes. Okay. So just have a look, we go send and receive, and Andrew receives the changes. And what do we see? In blue color, we see the new layout, and in red color, we see the previous layout. So this can apply to every part of the project, meaning that the project leader can check all type of data and all the changes that have happened to any element of the project, and can evaluate, can accept, can reject, or even out of the blue, we can open our model after the meeting with our clients, we can select any element and add what is called, in this case, issues. So you can allocate issues and tasks to different parts of the team. So you can even prepare all the tasks that the team has to work as they work. So everyone knows what they have to do and everyone works together in the same model in a flexible and intuitive way. And then the last step is about sharing our design with everyone. So in this case, we have BIMX, which is the application that is for smartphones and tablets that will allow us to access everything that we generate from a BIM platform, from Archicad, in a very easy way. So this is a recording from my iPad. In this case, we open BIMX, and what we have here is different projects. So these projects are called hypermodels that we export from our Archicad file. And this one, for example, is the tower we were seeing before. First of all, we can use BIMX as a way to generate impressive presentations. So we have all documentation that we have, renders, images, we have them in this BIMX file, but also we have all the documentation. The first different thing that you can see is we have these blue color symbols floating on the diagrams. But also, we're going to explain that now. What we can do is open any document that was generated from the project will be linked to the 3D model. So in this sense, we're not only looking at drawings or to the representation, anyone, and this is really fantastic when we collaborate with clients, everyone can have a look to the project from 2D and the 3D view, and they can navigate and they can really have a proper overview of what is happening. And this is also very useful when it comes to take decisions in meetings or even in construction site. We can really check what is happening and we can really check against the reality. And then when we open this documentation, these little blue spots, what they do is that they open the documentation that is there, because documentation is interlinked. So if we click in an elevation from a plan, it will go directly to the elevation. If we click in one detail, it will give us to that detail or to the next plan or whatever. So we can navigate intuitively in between documentation. The next example, in this case, is a project that is on the tender stage. So this project has hundreds of drawings, okay, from the local submission to the different 1 to 250 drawings, which is the overall layouts, 1 to 100. We have details, and all that data is there. We don't even need to print. Okay, of course, we're looking at the drawing with the same quality as we're looking to a PDF. Again, with the only difference that when we open our drawings, we're opening our virtual model, and we can always access the 3D space, the 3D area from which this documentation was taken. Again, this is recording in real time. There is basically no limitation on the amount of drawings or the size of the project. So this case is, for example, is a residential project of 40,000 square meters with a podium and 2 towers. And here we can navigate through the different units. And of course, we can select different elements. In this case, we just select with our fingertip, and we will see all the information that we want to put inside that element. Everyone can check it. And not only dimensions, but also fire resistant values, standards that needs to comply with, material, the manufacturer. We can add all the specs that we need here. In this case, we don't have much because it's a tender stage, so we remove a lot of the data, but all the specs we need can be added in BIMX. So BIMX allows us to have the full package and all the information needed. And of course, generated elevation, if we have to do this manually using 2D, or we struggle because the BIM platform we use struggles to produce large amount of documentation from large models, I think that problem we should overcome. We should be able to allow the machine to do this job for us. Now, when we go, for example, for the details, in this case, the details of the firescape, we also can check that most of it has just some labels, some dimensions, but all is drawn automatically from the 3D parts of the project. So again, it's not really hard, it's not really complicated, and it really makes our life easier for us and for all the stakeholders involved in the project. We also can take dimensions, can measure areas, so we can check things against reality when we're in construction site. And that makes it even easier, the whole process. Now I'm just going to show, apart from the capabilities, I just want to show a couple of case studies very quickly. This one is from Fender Katsalides, the second tallest building worldwide that is being in construction, is currently under construction, which is the Merdeka Tower in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. So this mega project, the architects explain how by using Archicad, they were allowed really to work in a more smooth way, because the possibility of handling these gigantic proportions of a project and generate documentation from it gave them really a great advantage during the development. So it's not about, because it's a mega project, it's a landmark, you should hire hundreds of consultants to do, BIM consulting and BIM models for you. Architects should be in control of this. And our solution, our BIM tool should be able to allow us to handle these large projects. And the second example, in this case, comes from Philippines. I don't know if some of you know these guys, but IDEA is one of the best 100 architecture firms in the world. And for me, the reason why I admire them is because in 2005, the leader of the team, called Giorgio Tolentino, he decided that everyone will drop to the CAD tools. So that's it. This was already more than 15 years ago. And they will only work with virtual project tools, which is what we call BIM. So of course, the team of IDEA develops all sorts of large-scale projects, but also they evolved into start creating their own tools and programming their own solutions to become even more efficient and be able to do consultants for other firms. But I'm going to show one video of this journey that IDEA was taking on.
In my 40 years in the practice, this is the fastest I've seen the AEC industry move. The complexity of kind of work we do now has changed dramatically, which requires us to apply the most technology possible and to make our process more integrated and more collaborative. We decided to drop to the cold turkey overnight. For better or for worse, we will do projects in Archicad. We have a few reasons why we did it that way. We did not want them to give people a chance to go back to the old technology. Our lesson in anything in change is if you make exceptions to one, you have to give exceptions to all. There were no experts who helped us in our market. We researched, we came up with the right workflow for us, the right system, the right BIM standards. We just built on from one success to the other. In about 4 to 6 months, we were more efficient than 2D technology. This was our opportunity to put ourselves in a place where we can excel. And that's when we went to the realm of programming. Our idea is to change our workflow such that it is very front-ended. We will make a very detailed BIM model, make sure that it is done properly. The amount of quality control that we spend, you cannot imagine. The beauty of that is once we have done this program, it will automatically generate documents based on a very detailed BIM model. 6 months of work we can do in 2 days. Since we hold the BIM model, we said, we have something that can be processed for VR application. We have the first cave facility in Asia. For example, we're part of this technology group that developed VR applications. We created an app. You can see the project in VR wherever you are in the world. It will sync real time with what we see here in the cave. We should always be in a position that we're afraid, that we know there are risks, but at the same time, there's a bigger gain if we succeed. It's the same feeling that I had when we committed to go to BIM. We just committed to change.
Well, I think it's a really great example, Nate. I truly admire this team. So just to summarize, these are the topics that I describe about the what we believe is all this idea about having a more intuitive workflow. So some of these topics, as I think we're sharing a poll in the Q&A session, some of the topics will be further developed later on in sessions, in presentations, and in workshops. So this agenda that is in the upcoming sessions will be two of them will be very soon, in 2 weeks. So the topics are still to be defined by the associates of these organizations, and will be 23rd of March, 25th, and then in May. So just to summarize the conclusion, I believe that architects, our relationship with BIM technology should change, because we still rely on manual work and duplicate efforts. And we all often talk about the BIM software that we use, describing all the problems that it has, which it's something that is common. But what we propose is that our solutions, our BIM solutions, are truly able to give an intuitive workflow for architects. So our ecosystem of solutions, what we want to provide is an easy to learn and flexible workflow for architects. So we automate and leverage on technology, and we avoid errors. So we are more efficient, and we save time. And we also can work from anywhere, which is something that is going to be the new normal. And we can focus on our passion, which is add value to architecture. So as we were shown before, I believe that we need to take the challenge and learn. We organize from Graphisoft in Hong Kong once a month this training that is called BIM in 100 clicks. That is 3 hours. And we organize it for free. Everyone can join. And for those teams that want to do a change and change from 2D or their own BIM solution, they want to change to use our solution, we also can do this dedicated training for the team as an introduction to Archicad. We also have a learning platform that is called Graphisoft Learning Platform. And everyone can make a Graphisoft ID. Everyone can join. Don't need to be one of our customers. You can join, and you can purchase your own self-trained packages. But these packages are free for our customers. So it's not only about modeling, about BIM Cloud, about BIMX, but it's also how to work better, how to optimize, how to work with IFC, how to work in a more efficient way doing deliveries and submissions. We also have a YouTube channel dedicated for Hong Kong market, and we have also a Facebook page where we promote different workflows, different breakthroughs and examples of our customers. Again, our message is that we are here to help. Together with our local partner, Global BDC, we believe that working together with our customers and supporting them is the best way of learning. So the final message I want to communicate is that we should focus on our passion and add value to architecture, because BIM should be easy and fun. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Eugenio. That was a very brief but informative primer. So for those of you who have joined us towards the end, this is basically a primer session on Open BIM via Graphisoft's platform Archicad. And there will be 4 follow-up sessions, in which case there's a doodle link you can add, fill that out, and tell us what you want to learn more. And then hopefully you can join us either in March or May for those sessions. All right, let's see. Looks like we have one question from John. Vivian? Vivian, I believe your mic is muted. Okay.
Maybe you need to open the mics. You were saying that it was mute by default at the beginning.
Not for panelists. I believe panelists have the mic. I'll read John Miller's question. In the example of the 3D detail, at what point are all the technical information on the composition wall types and floors, etc., put into the model? I believe that would be a question for you. Yeah, Johan.
Yeah, so that depends. For example, when we're moving from concept to schematic design or DD, or depending on what you call in your country, of course, the moment you have like the model already generates the documentation we need for concept. Okay, 1 to 200, something very simple, and you say, okay, now we start schematic design. Usually, you will start to develop more detailed documentation in 2D. So it's in that moment when you start to add, in this case, you have a slab. Okay, which in the 3D is one material that can be even an abstract material, can be concept slab. And then you say, okay, now this slab is going to have this amount of concrete, this amount of insulation, this amount of this and that material. And you start to modify and enrich the model. So that in a few days, depending, of course, in the size of the project or the team, is what starts to make that the same project that you have in Archicad now has way more information. And when you do a plan, when you do a section, when you do a detail in one area, it starts to show all the information that has embedded. So it will depend on the stage of the project that you work, that you will start to gradually make more detail, and the drawings will come from it. I hope that answered the question.
So I have a follow-up on that. So at some point, information will be added on in the 2D two-dimensionally through drafting, right?
You mean, of course, there is a moment that, you can do a super detailed model that is one-to-one, is as they call as built. Mm-hmm. But I believe that there's no necessary, and also in my experience, okay, in the projects I've been doing, it never worth, I think, to do that, because there is a moment that the last group details that you have in a project, you start to produce 1 to 5, 1 to 2, or 1 to 1. It's very quickly to model them. Sorry, to draw them in 2D. When you have below, as I was showing, for example, in trace reference, you have the model. The part of the model that you want to detail. Okay, so in that sense, the detailing process first is much faster. That starts to doing details in a 2D from the detail that somebody forward to you or from another peer. You just start to draft on top of the model, and if there are changes, you can see them immediately. And then it's very easy to change the details. And then the details, the most important for me is that they're accurate.
Okay. All right, we have about 5 more minutes, so maybe about a couple of questions from the audience, if you have any. And for those of you who haven't done so, please do click on the Doodle link so we can get, the more feedback we get from you, the more we're able to make this relevant for you.
There's one message here, says, when working in a team with, I don't know if that's a question.
Where's that?
In the chat.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Welcome.
I actually have some questions on my own while waiting for the others. So, because I'm pretty much a user, like a Revit user, and this talk do let me know a lot of knowledge about like what Archicad and how BIM actually works, which is very amazing, and I thought is a way forward as well. I agree, but I have questions about working with the mainland project. I don't know if you have experience with mainland project, because the pace, like the workflow and the project time scale is so much shorter than in Europe or in Hong Kong even. How would you see that in the collaboration between Hong Kong or Europe with mainland China clients or the government? Do you have that experience, or how can you see this software can help?
Well, in my experience, when we work with China and the local design institutes, of course, you're right, the pace is very fast. I must say that I've done even faster projects in other countries, which is not, I don't think it's that nice, but I believe that for us, for my team, it was a relief to use Archicad because, of course, you need to be, when you work in those fields, you need to be good with the tool you use regardless, okay? If you have people drafting, they need to be good. You cannot have a bunch of, of new people, new joiners just to do anything. With not a crazy level of expertise, the fact that you just keep, the things like when you model in Archicad, there's a moment that, the model is so easy that then you start to, add the documentation that is needed. And you know that when you do that, just with the model ready and adding, more sections and more elevations, the documentation is there already and it's correct. Then if it's visualized exactly as the client is going to expect, or you have all the labels, dimensions, then of course you need to add that. But the great bunch of work is already done for you. So of course, you need to allocate resources in a different way. You don't have people drafting clack, 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 in using 2D, tack, tack, tack all the time. But you have, a group of architects spending hours on having a model, okay, that is more or less ready, and then someone checking that the documentation is correct. So you just allocate resources. You don't draft high speed, you model at high speed, which the advantage that it has is that you are working on your project, okay? So in that sense, it's very easy also, and again, even if it's not your responsibility, and this is an important conversation, a lot of architects tell me, well, I don't care if there are errors on my drawings. I send them to China. And I say, well, I believe that as architects, we should care. And every time I've been working in high-speed projects and there was a consultant or a collaborator that was not using BIM, it was very easy to spot the errors. And that's for me, when it's like, this is a thing that we can save. And so in high-speed projects, I believe that, again, BIM, but at least in my experience, Archicad is a great asset.
Thank you. Believe is a very good way forward, right? Let's see if we have any more questions. Take one from Florence, when she is asking, when working in a team with architect and engineer, everyone are required to have the same version of Revit in order to read each other's file. Does Archicad work in this similar fashion?
Well, I believe that Archicad has an advantage in that sense. Archicad current version is 24. And Archicad can open out of the box without doing anything, any Archicad file up to version 14. So if you have an older version of an Archicad file 14, means that you did that Archicad file probably 12 years ago or 15 years ago. Then if it's lower than 14, like Archicad 10, there is even available on the website some plugins that you can download to open them. So all this problem of interversions, that again, I also hear every day from the customers and the people that come to us, inquiring about our solutions. Archicad doesn't really have that problem. It's really easy to go back and forth in the versions. And I don't know if it's the question also talking about, I don't know if it's only about versioning or it's also about when collaborating with engineers that are using.
I think in her question is about version, right? Because I know in Revit, you have to use the same version. Otherwise, you can't open each other's work. So exactly. If I have the version 2020, I can't open the file in 2016 and I cannot down save. So
exactly. For example, So for example, in Archicad, it's true that if I have Archicad 20 and you send me a file in Archicad 24, I cannot open it. Okay, but to have Archicad update, there is there's one subscription that you can have, which is is very cheap and it just allows you to update Archicad every year for free. But what is very easy is to access to the older version. So you have a version that is 5 or even 10 years older. You just click open, and that's it. It doesn't matter. That's why you have the latest version. I have Archicad 24, and I open any Archicad project I did in the past without any problem.
But once you upgrade that, can other people with the older version cannot open it?
Okay,
no, they would have to upgrade.
Yeah,
they will have to upgrade. Well, there is true. Archicad can save down to the previous version. So Archicad 24 can save us Archicad 23. Okay. But it's true that the people should have to upgrade. And again, the advantage that in order to upgrade, you don't need to buy another Archicad. You don't have to. You just need to pay a small subscription, and then you have access to all the versions that you want.
I guess this is the question because if we are dealing with larger projects, and we have to collaborate with different companies, not only architects but engineers or contractors, and they might not have the budget to buy a newer version while they have the older version. So I guess that's where the question comes from. Right?
Of course, and
Yeah.
as I was saying, the budget is also very important, and is another topic is that Archicad licenses are not rental. You don't pay them per year; you have them perpetual forever. And if you want to have them update, you just need to pay, as I said, a very small fraction of the original price. So in that sense, it's very hard. Yeah,
I thought there is a rental. So,
sorry, there is a rental if you want. There is, but what I'm saying is that the return of the investment when you go for the perpetual is so large. You buy Archicad, you have it forever. So that's why rental, most of the people don't use it, because once you have Archicad, then, as I said, you pay this small subscription fee, which is really a fraction of the total price. Then you have all the versions that you want. So in that sense, it's a great value for the money you spend.
Actually, I have a follow-up question by this. If I'm a Revit user, can I exchange the file from Revit to Archicad? Is that exchangeable?
Yeah, there is ways to do it. So now Archicad can open and export Revit files. Of course, that way will not be as if the Revit file I export from Archicad is not as if was done natively in Revit. Okay, so maybe it's not editable in the same way, but the way worldwide all the industry is moving forward is about this open BIM concept, in which we exchange data through this open format, which is IFC. So in this sense, we exchange data as the same way we used to exchange drawings. Probably you have experience receiving tons of CAD files that you overlay, but legally you should not use and modify it. You should create your own. So IFC is the same concept for 3D. I export models as a reference, so everyone can have access. I send you my model, as a reference, so you can open it in Revit. You can check it, and you do your own work in your own model.
Okay. Let's read another question from John. He's asking, what does experience tell you about how efficiency is affected by the number of consultants using BIM on one project? Say one project that is done by one design firm versus another project that has several consultants working in BIM on the other project. Any difference?
Well, I think I mentioned slightly about this topic. Again, in my experience, for us, having the opportunity to work with Archicad will really save time. We had, as I mentioned, I always had a small team. The last 5 years, I had my own firm before I joined Graphisoft, and we're always a small team. And we with the engineers teams were hundreds of engineers using Revit or whatever, and we were exchanging documentation with all of them. And when there were other design consultants, as you mentioned, the problem is that the moment we had to collaborate and exchange drawings, the errors were spot on their side. For us, was just an advantage. And I always use Archicad even if nobody was using BIM. I just use Archicad as a tool to produce faster and more reliable documentation.
Okay. Is there any more questions from the floor? Otherwise, I have after you said that, actually, I have a question on. I think you answered it earlier, but I want to clear as well. Like, does that mean like when I can say like in BIM project, usually it's more helpful for the later stage of the project because you are getting on the construction phase, so you have to collaborate and like everything has to be very accurate. But in terms of the early stage, in design phase, so people has to like in design team, you have to deliver the design in massing model very quickly to the clients, and maybe you have to do some like parametric forms and stuff. Would that be something like, would you recommend saying like BIM would be a software to help for later stage of the project, or is actually designed to accommodate the whole process? Like, what's your take? Yeah.
So my suggestion, my experience again is that Archicad, it is a friendly tool to start from the beginning. That's why I show the video when I start modeling from nothing.
Yeah.
In a few minutes, you have a design option. because it's really flexible. I would suggest always use BIM in general. Even you mentioned, you say a BIM project. For me, they're all BIM projects. For me, BIM is a way of working nowadays in the 21st century. It is true that a lot of BIM tools are not friendly and they cannot start working in the concept design, the concept stage with them. But with Archicad, you can. I mean, that's why our customers, there is a moment that they don't use 2D tools. They don't use tools to draft because they don't have even 3D tools. I mean, Rhinoceros and Grasshopper, I love it. I use it myself. And the good thing is, like, I can work freely in that tool. And then I know that with the connection, I will have the model in Archicad and I will start documenting. And once you have that workflow, that connection created, then you just change your design and the documentation keeps updating. So again, I believe that Archicad should be used from the beginning.
So by using the Rhino and Grasshopper as the base to help the architect
as the base to help, of course, because some type of, I mean, if you have the opportunity to work in projects that are very challenging, sometimes, you know, the projects have been working that got built, they didn't require all the capabilities of Rhino. They were more simple in terms of geometry. But you know, competitions and all the concept designs that you want to do something really outstanding. Of course, we use Rhino Grasshopper, and then when we need to produce documentation and you know, and axonometrics and all sort of documents, then we just manage to bring that into Archicad. In Archicad, we don't model, and we just create it there and we just document. So I mean, Rhino and Grasshopper, it's a fantastic tool, and I encourage.
And the next follow-up question is the reading of the Rhino model, because I know sometimes when I import Rhino model to Revit, it become mesh. I don't know how complex or can it be better in Archicad in this way?
Yeah, so sometimes it's better, you know, the connection I show, the video, there is no, I don't open a Rhino model. I just, a few polylines become my slabs. Okay, so I don't save as and open. I just you know, the connection creates the geometry in Archicad. But what we have done many times is that sometimes you have, you know, in a concept stage, I don't need to do that many documents. So documents, the plans and the elevations are very simple. So I just open the Rhino model. And when you open the Rhino model, sometimes it becomes mesh, but it can also become objects. So the geometry is translated into NURBS. You know, NURBS is, don't remember what it stands for, but NURBS is a way more, you know, soft way of having geometry than in a mesh. So Archicad can open NURBS on Rhino and become them NURBS. And then the geometry is exactly the same as you have, and you just take, it's like taking screenshots. It's like you do an elevation, you do a section, and then you just use that model.
So that in a way, the model is much lighter than the other.
It's quite light. I mean, as I said, I mean, with Archicad, you know, with other BIM solutions, you know, working in airports or working in large infrastructure projects, everyone says, no, we have to break up the model. Archicad really, you can work in projects that are 2 gigabytes, 4 gigabytes. I think I have, you know, some company in Singapore is developing a project that is 800,000 square meters of GFA. It's a gigantic project. It's one building. It's a massive project. And of course, they use in Archicad, and they say that the problem is that they need to, you know, when they collaborate with other consultants, they have a problem opening the files because you know, unfortunately their tool is not that robust in that sense.
Yeah. So in a way, do you think is so in this sense, does that mean you only have one control file instead of having several files being linked into one?
You can have very often we have several files, but not because the project becomes heavy or because it's different. It's just because, you know, you have, for example, a tower, the typical floors, it's very easy to have them in separate files because like this, of course, the file goes always a bit faster. And then you work quickly. You have sometimes people just designing on these typical floors and then someone just combining them and evaluating and give feedback to the other team. So from the strategy of the project delivery point of view, makes sense to have files, several files, but not because of the limitation of the tool.
Right. Okay.
Now that's starting to go into implementation on a case by case, on a project by project type.
Yeah.
consultancy.
Yes, you can keep going on. Like,
You can keep going. You can keep going. Yeah.
But I think the message is clear, and that is that, you know, we're getting to an age where the technology is robust enough to open each other's files and support them natively, so that whether they're large or small, whether you use a Rhino file to model a complex geometry for an overall form, or it could be just to model a feature wall or something small that you then incorporate back in. And so different softwares, you can use them for their advantages, their comparative advantages, and then just pass on and take the best of every component.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be just tied to one or two softwares. All right, I think that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you very much, Johanyo. Thank you, Vivian. Thank you all for attending. And let us know, you know, whether or not this is helpful and what you'd like to know more. And we hope to see you in the next one. Thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.